Level Up is a regular podcast that brings you topics to help you perform at work and in life at your very highest level. Your host is Dan Chiodo, an executive coach, corporate trainer, and author. He is president of Impact Training and Executive Coaching. And now, here's Dan.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. And we are here on Level Up. This is your link to lifelong learning. So today, kind of interesting, we have a wonderful guest, and we also have a topic we're going to be talking about. Here's the topic. Write this down. It's called your emotional signature. It's something we haven't heard a whole lot of in this country, but I checked its origin. In Germany, they do talk about this, and it's made its way here. I think it has a nice ring to it. Ever since I heard about it, I thought about, well, what is an emotional signature? It's actually that thing that draws people to us or away from us. But what we want to do is have a good emotional signature. So I liked the term, and I've been researching it. Part of that research is thinking back of people that maybe you think have a good emotional signature. And that brings us to today's guest. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll take a look at where he's been, his walk in life. Now, he's had a really rich diversity of jobs, and that's something that I want to explore. He's been a front of the house manager for Cheddar's Scratch Kitchen and also a barista. That's where I met him, at a Starbucks. He was a barista there. And when I talked to anyone about him, they would say too that he had such a great connection. He was establishing a good personal brand, which is another term that's very similar to your emotional signature. Now, he also was director of a public relations firm at an event center and worked in client relations in New York City. When he was in New York City, he was also a model for True Model Management in the city, and also was a butler at Al's Nest in New York City. So you can see this rich diversity, which we will explore. Oh, also some retail store experience. But now he is a pastor. He's a pastor of one of Elevation Church's locations. His is in Winston-Salem, but they are all over the country, about 20 locations. And he is married to his wife, Zoe, who is always at his side during this awesome journey that he has. Folks, meet my guest for this episode, Parker Richardson. Hi, Parker. How are you?
Dan, I'm doing so well. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. We are going to learn how excellent you're doing because I'm talking about what you're doing now. But we have to explore the past. I mean, I want you to think about all the places you've been. Before we do it, by the way, I think the first question should be, where and when did you meet Zoe?
Yes, that is a great question. So I was living in New York City, and of course, you kind of explained several of the opportunities that I had when I was in New York, and then I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma to also kind of explore a couple other opportunities. And I was managing a men's clothing boutique, and she actually happened to come into the store to buy something for her dad for Father's Day. And immediately there was a connection, but we didn't start really talking or dating until about a year after we had our initial connection in 2017. So it was in 2018 that we began forming a relationship and, of course, working towards marriage.
That's excellent. Well, I wanted to know all about that. Obviously, she left a good emotional signature, too. So
She did. She did. Very much so. Yes. Highly impressed.
Well, you know, when we look back years ago, a lot of people worked at one or two places, and they would move up in those organizations and not necessarily try different things, be different places. And I really like the fact that some people have this diversity of experience. I think it brings so much. So I thought we'd play a little game here at the beginning of our episode. I want to list one of the places that you worked, and I want you to tell me something that has stuck in your mind, something you learned there that was great, or just anything about what you think about when you think of that place. So let's start with Cheddar's as a front of house manager. What did you learn?
I started working at Cheddar's. I was in college and I started working at Cheddar's as a server. And very quickly, I found out that, of course, I always knew that I loved people, but I really loved getting to see people enjoy an experience and create an experience for people, knowing that every single time we go to a restaurant, people are expecting some sort of experience given the nature of the restaurant they're going to. And so in order to elevate someone else's experience, I, of course, wanted to create that as a server, but then very quickly started gaining more responsibilities within the company of Cheddar's. And I got promoted to be a front of house manager, therefore managing the front of house staff. So that included the hosts and the hostesses and the bussers and the servers. And what I learned is in order to elevate someone else's thinking, in order to create a wonderful experience for someone, you first need to believe in the person that you're wanting the experience to be created for. And so it really taught me to believe the best in someone and to believe the best about the people that I'm leading as well. Because I think if people understand and can sense and can see that a person in leadership above them sees them as someone who is gifted, sees them as someone that has potential, sees them as someone rather than just a server in a restaurant, but someone that has a gift that they can bring, I think we get to see the best out of people.
That's wonderful. And that's a true leader too. You don't just give it lip service, but you really feel that way about people. Okay, let's take you to Starbucks. What do we learn there?
First, I love this game that we're playing, Dan. I think it's great because I have had a wide variety of jobs in my background. And so what I learned at Starbucks was the importance of relationship, I think, because it was at Starbucks that I really developed a love for coffee, but just getting to see the nature of a coffee shop and what it meant to so many people. It's where I met you, Dan, and it's where I got to see you work day in and day out, meeting with people, building relationship. But I also saw that relationships in a coffee shop can take many different shapes. They can form and then they can end. And I just thought that a coffee shop experience was so unique because I got to see the nature of relationship and how a simple act of drinking coffee can build and tear down relationship given the nature of what they're there to do. And so I just loved the atmosphere of a coffee shop, but I also love getting to meet different individuals and their outlook on what a coffee shop meant to them.
Wow. What about the event center?
So just know the nature of all of these roles. I was working Cheddar's and Starbucks and the event center all at the same time for about a kind of a 6-month period is where all of these overlapped at one point. And so that was a pretty busy time in my life, as well as studying and going to school. So at the event center, I got to see how partnerships really is the catalyst for change. And because as the PR department that I was over was really just me and a couple other people, and we were just trying to build relationship within the city, within different other organizations that we wanted to do relationship with. I realized that we can't meet every need in our city, but what we can do, we can come together with other partners in the city to create a much stronger a much more unified city and a much more unified space if we just simply dive into relationship with other people that are maybe doing different things, but how can we serve the different organizations that we're in relationship with? And so I really got to see the value of partnerships and the value of city networking, which as an early 20 something, I think I was 22 at the time, whenever I carried this role, was very formative. And what I saw through building relationship in the city and doing networking with other organizations, we got to build partners, and we got to really be able to be a service center for so many different organizations that needed a space to either meet, that needed a space to get their message across. And so partnerships is what I learned in order to grow and in order to scale. You have to have people that you're doing it with.
Very good. Okay, now we're in New York City and you're a model. So let's hear about that.
We're just jumping all over the country here. I love it. I love it. And I am very thankful for the wide kind of diversity of background that I have, and because it has afforded different opportunities. And whenever I stepped into modeling in New York City, I wasn't the model that you would maybe think of, because what I wasn't on is billboards, is magazines. The modeling that I actually did is I worked with designers of brands, and I was, in a sense, a human mannequin. So, of course, as designers are making clothes, as new companies are launching new items, they're fitting these items, their pieces, their clothes to bodies, not just a plastic mannequin. So what I was, they called me a fit model. So not a fitness model, but a fit model, which really works very hands-on with the designer in order to make sure that their pieces actually fit the body that they wanna sell to.
Very interesting.
It was a very interesting experience.
So now you're a butler. Tell us about that. That's very cool.
So I did both the modeling and the butlering at the same time when I was in New York. And I got connected to an agency that staffed models and actors. They staffed them with different estates around kind of the New York area. And so I got connected to a family through that they needed a butler. And so I worked very closely with the family. It was one of the most beautiful experiences because I got to really live with a family and not operate as a family member per se, but of course being able to serve this family with intention and be able to come alongside of them in some of their highest moments and some of their lowest moments, and getting to really see a family unit operate in a healthy way. They were a very healthy family dynamic. And so it was beautiful just getting to see a husband love his wife and love their kids and love their grandkids. And so I got to be hands-on with experiencing a healthy family dynamic, which was really special because I hadn't necessarily seen that growing up at different times. And so getting to be inundated with it, of course, serving this family, being on call at all points throughout the day. It wasn't just a clock in, clock off. Depending on how many days in a row I worked, I was on call 24/7. But just getting to be supportive of this family, love this family, and see the dynamic of this family was really special.
Yes. I like how each of your jobs, the things that you've done, you really take it to a new level. It's not just performing the action, but understanding how it relates, especially to people, to partnerships, to whatever it is. That's incredible, just incredible. So now, how did you discover Elevation Church?
So it was in New York City, actually, that I first heard about Elevation Church. And I had followed their pastor our pastor here at Elevation Church for a number of years, had listened to a couple of his messages. I also played music at a time of my life many, many years ago. And so I was familiar with the band that came out of Elevation Church, which is just simply called Elevation Worship, but they've traveled all over. They've done a lot of different things. And so I was familiar with the pastor and the band, and I was actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and several of the things that I had put my hand to were kind of coming to an end. Contracts were ending. And so I decided to look for another opportunity, and I didn't exactly know where I was going to go, but I was just actually searching on Elevation Church's website, and I saw this kind of leadership development program. And I had always been a part of the church. I had always loved serving the church. And I thought maybe I could develop in my leadership of really what does it look like to lead people? Because I've naturally been in positions and roles where I have led people and I love people, but I know that I have a lot more to learn. And so I just sought out this opportunity with them, and the application process was fairly quick. And so I decided to pick up from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where I was at the time, and move to North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina specifically, and walk through 6 months of developing in my leadership. And there was an opportunity to come on as one of the staff members of the Winston-Salem campus specifically. And so I took that opportunity right after I came out of the program, and I've been here in Winston-Salem ever since. So that was in June of 2018, whenever that program ended and whenever I officially started working here at Elevation Church.
That's great. You said you have a lot to learn. I love to hear people say that, because I don't think any of us have it all figured out. So there's so much to learn. And when we come back for the second half, we're going to learn a lot more about you. I forgot to mention the music thing, so that's something I didn't say in the resume. But this is Level Up, and we are here today with our guest, Parker Richardson. And we're going to look at what he does at Elevation Church when we come back after a word from our sponsor.
If you're like most people, your thoughts tend to bounce all over the place. And when you are stressed or worried, they naturally gravitate towards the negative. Many are so accustomed to allowing negative thoughts, worry, fear, and stress to dominate their thinking, they don't even realize they're doing it. Some even feel guilty if they're not constantly thinking about their problems. Mind walking is a daily 15-minute exercise where you practice thinking on purpose while you walk. Just walk and listen as success coach Bill Mansell guides you through the mind walking exercises. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll learn how to get your mind's attention and focus your thoughts towards what's right in your life now and what you want to create in your future. Visit mindperk.com to learn more and purchase the Mind Walking program.
Welcome back to Level Up. This is Dan Chiodo, your host, and today we're here with Parker Richardson. And we're going to continue our conversation. We learned so much about his background, and now it's time to talk to him about leadership. So he has said several very important things about leadership, and I'm going to tell him some of the things that he has said and kind of hold his feet to the fire so that he can explain some of those things to us. Like, Parker, you said that you love people intentionally. I just think that's a great statement. Explain that a little bit.
Yes, across the several different opportunities that I've been able to be afforded, I have seen that through loving people and being able to recognize specific giftings within people, I think you get to maximize the person in such a beautiful way. And of course, as leaders, we're all wanting to move something forward, and we're wanting to reach a goal, move an objective forward. We're wanting to be respected and be honored and looked at and revered in some ways. And so I think a huge catalyst to moving something forward is being able to recognize the specific giftings in the people that you're leading. And that just doesn't come passively. I think it comes very proactively in being able to have specific conversation with people, being able to really see what do people do that give them life as well within the job. that they're doing? What are people's unique and specific skill sets? And how can we give them opportunities to be able to grow those and use those? And so I think being able to lead people intentionally really forces us just to have a different perspective of who the people are that we are leading, and that they are not just their job, but they bring skill set and giftings to this job in order to further whatever the goal or objective is that we're trying to further.
Yes. And I can see that you as a leader certainly try to uplift them. And we need that. People need to know how great they are. And it sounds like you bring that out in them. You also said that you're fueled by seeing people step into their purpose. So let's talk about that.
Of course, getting to see, whenever I truly found like, wow, this gives me life, this gives me purpose. Whenever I was able to recognize that within myself, it became very clear that, well, just as much as I am being fueled by this, I want to give other people opportunity to also experience that very same thing. Also being able to experience, it looks very different, what gives you purpose versus what gives me purpose. But if we can create opportunities and be able to once again intentionally see the person and those giftings that they have, how can I present them with opportunities for them to step into their purpose? And so for me, I do love people, and I really love people. I really love getting to see people take a step and being able to recognize that they did this, they accomplished something. And so what I don't want to do is I don't want to give or think that someone's going to automatically fail. So it starts with assuming the best in people, and that can be really hard to assume the best in people. But if we start with this assumption that there is more inside of someone than what they are currently operating with, if I truly believe in someone and confident that they can get to a place that I think that they can go, then I'm going to show them steps to be able to get there. And through those steps that we as leaders get to provide our people that we lead, they get to discover purpose along the way.
That's wonderful. It sounds like a big part of what you do then as a leader is to teach them, right? To be a teacher as well as a leader.
Mm-hmm. I used to play sports in high school, and really there's kind of this coach player mentality where I may not be the one playing, I may not be the one doing all of the different tasks, carrying all of the different responsibilities, but the responsibility that I do carry is making sure that we can elevate our thinking in order to see the areas of opportunity where we can step into, and being able to really set the vision for this is where we want to go. And I have my players a part of the team that can take us there.
That is really good. You said that the byproduct of your own leadership development will be the development of others. So it sounds like you really work at that every day. That's a big part of what you do then, developing them, right?
It is. It is a big part of my job, but also it's a big part of my responsibilities to develop myself. And, I say a byproduct of my development is the development of the people around me, because I'm a firm believer. If I am getting better as a leader, if I am developing in my own leadership, then the people that I have direct contact to, that they will catch the things that I'm also learning myself. And we of course know that culture in itself is more caught than it is taught. And so I know that in order to develop myself, I have to take intentional time throughout the day, whether that's before I go to work, whether that's during my lunch, or whatever that looks like, finding the rhythm that really works for you. It can be different for everyone. For me, it's different. But I do make sure that every single day I'm setting aside time to work on myself. and figure out what are the things that I need to develop in. What are the areas of opportunity that I can step into, and what are the perspective that maybe I need to shift? And in me making these changes within myself, those people that I have direct leadership over, that I also get to encourage them, and they get to see, well, Parker is making shifts and changes in these areas. And so if my leader is doing this, then I then have an opportunity to make shifts and changes in these specific areas too.
That's right. And so they may notice that about you. And so I have a question for you as an executive coach. Sometimes I will tell people they don't realize how good they are because they're moving on to the next thing. They're working on the day-to-day, and they don't really see how they're developing. So are you a person who doesn't see it, or are you a person who looks back and sees how you are getting better and better?
I'm a person that doesn't see it.
Okay.
I think we all need people to be able to speak into the areas of growth that we're having. And fortunately, I have a wonderful wife. As you stated earlier, I love my wife so much. And a question that we have asked ourselves pretty recently, but we've done it more recently. And that's been a question of, what is it like to be on the other side of me whenever I'm growing? And so it's really just a self-awareness tactic of, how can I learn more about myself? And a big part of that is by asking people that I'm around frequently, what are the areas that I'm growing in? What has been the growth over these past 3 months? And I think during COVID, we've spent a lot more time together than maybe we did, because we're quarantined, we're spending time, as we're isolated alone. And so we've really been able to challenge ourselves in our own development and our own growth. But also, as we challenge each other, we get to speak to the specific areas that we have seen each other grow and develop in as well.
So that is a wonderful thing for you both to be doing during that time when it was the year of COVID. So let me ask you now, what was church like? What did that look like during that period?
Well, church was obsolete as far as when it came to meeting in a physical form. We here at Elevation Church, over the past 7 years, really, we've been able to, pour some time and intention into developing an online platform. So, of course, everything that you would see on a Sunday morning in a physical place, in a physical church, at a physical campus or location, we just project through YouTube or Facebook and several, or Roku. Several different of the online platforms. Pretty much wherever you watch any content, you can find Elevation Church. But we started doing that back in 2013. And so because of the foresight, honestly, from our pastor, we were positioned very well as a church because we already had an online experience. Although we weren't meeting physically, we still were able to point people to the online experience. And so more recently, though, in the past several months, we have started kind of adopting a Sunday morning back into the picture. But during the months where we didn't have any Sunday morning, we call it an experience or service, whatever you want to call it. What it forced us and caused us was to do ministry in the most purest form, to really know, well, what's going on with people, because all of our lives are busy, but the nature of COVID, I think, just hit a stop button on all of our lives. And we were able to really evaluate, well, what matters here? And for us as a church, we were like, well, people's health, people's growth, people's development, people matter. That's who matters. So how are our people? How are the people in the cities that we love, in the cities that we're located? How are they doing right now? Because there were so many people that were just hurting, that were trying to find jobs, that had been laid off, that were dealing with people with unhealthy family members, and people were losing family members and losing relations. There were just so much brokenness that was happening in 2020 And so we really had the opportunity as pastors and as the church to be exactly the church, and to come alongside of people in the most purest, intimate form, and to be able to really walk alongside people during some of their darkest days.
That's wonderful. You served them, and you served them well. That's
We try. It's hard. I'll be a vulnerable pastor here. It has been a challenging year, but it's been an eye-opening year.
I think another statement you made about innovation out of limitation, that has a nice ring to it. So what does that mean to you?
I believe that in limitation, we have two options. We can complain and mourn about the fact that we have limitation, or we can decide to see, well, what are the opportunities that I can take a step forward? What are the opportunities that I can move? What is the change that I can? Although I don't exactly know how to take a step, I'm going to look for a step rather than just choosing to be limited by whatever it is coming around. So I believe that innovation is born out of limitation. And I think there are so many different examples across the years, across all of the different challenges, whether nationally, personally, through so many different examples that maybe you have faced, Dan, I've faced, that we got to see, well, through this limitation of not being able to meet on a Sunday morning, we were able to birth a new expression of our ministry. We were able to birth an intentional area of just coming alongside of people and being able to walk alongside of so many people that were, like I said, living their darkest moments. We got to simply position ourselves in a way that says, hey, this is difficult. And we're able to empathize and just say, hey, we're here for you. For whatever you need, we're here. And so through that, we got to see, well, what does growing the church really even look like? What does that mean in a time whenever you can't meet physically? And we got to see, well, through online, which is where everybody was, how can we continue to reach and love people that expand far beyond our borders here, even in the US? And we've been able to reach the world really through this platform that we've been able to develop. And we have an incredible online team that is running with all of those details, logistics, and the care for the people. And so we just got to see that this limitation has actually moved us and positioned us in a way to love on and reach more people than maybe we ever thought we could.
Yes. You remind me of a CEO who recently said, when asked what was 2020 like, and he said, best year ever. And of course, everybody wanted to know about that best year ever. How could it be? And he said that he'd never created or innovated more, in the same way with his leaders, that they had never approached things like they did that particular year. And it made all the difference for setting them up for success.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is so true.
Parker, this has been wonderful, and I thank you so much for being a guest. You have found your niche, all the things that you've done, and this is just wonderful to see you contributing to this area of life. And so wish you all the luck in the world, and thank you for sharing your leadership thoughts with us.
Dan, thank you so much for welcoming me on the podcast. Just getting to know you over these past several years, you've always been just such a consistent leader. And I think consistency is one of the most beautiful qualities of leadership. And so thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I'm glad you noticed that about me, but I must say to you that we started this talk about our emotional signature. And obviously you had a good emotional signature in my mind too, because of how we interacted. So you can be a leader and sometimes have another leader challenge you or just bring out the best in you. And that's really what this has been all about. Emotional signature. So now I'd like our audience to think about the topic and think about what Parker has said about how he's living his life. And think about what your emotional signature is. Are people drawn to you or not so much? If they are, that's great. Maybe you've learned some new things that you might give some practice to. And maybe you want to learn more about it, have a better emotional signature. It's all up to you. So we thank you for joining us for Level Up. We will save you a front row seat for the next one too. And remember, show notes, they'll be there for you so that you can highlight maybe one thing and practice it. Then come back again and do one more thing. But just take one thing at a time. That's all you have to do to level up. Dustin, I think it's time to take us out. So cheers.
If you feel like this information was valuable to you, Dan would love it if you'd click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, please leave a comment. Also, if you're a first-time subscriber, be sure to ring that bell to be notified about future episodes. To learn more about what Impact's training and development can do for you and your business, visit impactbydan.com, where you can find more information about executive coaching, corporate training, keynote speaking, and much more. Thanks so much for watching.